Hello everyone, and welcome to the demo of OWASP Nettacker, an automated penetration testing framework. My name is Stepanyan, and you can find me on Twitter at SecureStep9. What is OWASP Nettacker project? OWASP Nettacker is an open source software tool which assists with penetration testing by automating information gathering and vulnerability scanning tasks. This software can be run on Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, and OWASP Nettacker currently supports both versions 2 and 3 of Python. Another important thing to mention about OWASP Nettacker is that this project was chosen by Google's Summer of Code internship program, and we had many students from all over the world working on enhancing this project during their summer breaks. So what is OWASP Nettacker? OWASP Nettacker is a kind of a Swiss Army knife tool. Just like Swiss Army knife, OWASP Nettacker is a collection of tools. It has a modular structure. It has many modules, or Swiss Army knife blades. It's relatively easy to create your own modules if you wish so and write them in Python. It has fast performance using Python's multi-threading model. It has customizable profiles, which are bundles of modules focused on specific tasks. You can automate and run it from command line, and it also has web UI and multi-go transforms. The official project webpage is on owasp.org, and on this page you can find the download links and also the documentation, which is located at GitHub Wiki. Running Nettacker 101. When you're running Nettacker, you need to specify at least 2 command line switches. -I is a command line switch to specify the target, and -M is the command line switch to specify which modules would you like to run on a specific target. For example, if you wish to run a port scan module on IP address 192.168.0.149, you will specify -I with the target IP address and -M port scan. There are various ways how you can define Nettacker targets. So using -I command line switch, you can specify a single IP address. You can also specify an IP address range. You can also specify CIDR/bits subnet. You can also specify a domain name or a specific URL. So here are the examples. So you can define a single IP address. You can define a range of IP addresses with a start and end IP address as the CIDR range, a domain name, a specific URL, which can start from HTTP or HTTPS. OWASP Nettacker has 3 types of modules. Modules of type scan, modules of type vuln, and modules of type brute. So modules of type scan for something. For example, port scan module will perform a port scanning function. Modules of type vuln will scan for a specific vulnerability, for example, Apache Struts vuln. And modules of type brute are the brute forcing modules, which would run a brute forcing attack on the target. Before we proceed to the live demo, responsible use warning. OWASP Nettacker is an offensive security tool, and just like any offensive security tool, you shall not misuse this tool for unauthorized access. And a reminder that performing security scans without permission from the owner of the computer system is illegal. Now let's jump into the live demo and see OWASP Nettacker in action. In this demo, I'm going to show how to install and run OWASP Nettacker on Kali Linux. Okay, let me switch to my Kali Linux and open the command line. So first thing we need to do, we need to install OWASP Nettacker. To install OWASP Nettacker, we need to clone it from GitHub first. So let's clone it. We need to type git clone https github.com/zdresearch/OWASP-Nettacker. Okay, when we press enter, Git will clone OWASP Nettacker into OWASP Nettacker folder. Let's change our directory there and have a look what's inside. As you can see, this is a piece of software written in Python. Before we can start using it, we need to install all the prerequisites or Python requirements which are listed in requirements.txt file. In order to do that, we need to run the command pip install -r requirements.txt. Okay, all the packages required to run Nettacker are now installed, and we can run Nettacker for the first time. To do that, we can just type Python and then nettacker.py and press enter. We got an error message, cannot specify the target, and we got the usage instructions. We scroll up, all the way up, you will see that Nettacker started and provided us with usage instructions. The ones that interest us are the ones that I showed you on my running Nettacker 101 slide, which are the targets, and -m for the scan method or module. And this is where all the modules are listed. Okay. Now let's run the first example of OWASP Nettacker. I want to perform a port scan. To run a port scan module, we need to type Python nettacker.py. Then we need to define the target. The target is 192.168.132.177. And if I run Nettacker now, again, you will see that we got an error message. Please choose your scan method. We forgot that to run Nettacker, we need at least two parameters. The target, what are we scanning, and the method, what type of module we're scanning with. So I want to run port scan on this target. So as you can see now, the port scan is running, and very quickly, Nettacker has identified all the ports which were running on this target. Okay, in my next example, I'm going to show how to run OWASP Nettacker on a list of targets which is defined in a text file. Here I have a text file called mylist.txt, which contains 3 IP addresses and a hostname for OWASP.org. So let's run a port scan on this list. To do this, let's run OWASP Nettacker again. And instead of -i, we need to define the targets using -l because we're loading a list from the file which is called mylist.txt. And the rest is the same, so I need to define the method. So let me define port scan. Okay, let's run Nettacker. And as you can see, all the targets are now being loaded and port scanned. Okay, the port scan is now complete, and if we scroll up, you will see all the results shown on the screen here. Okay, now I want to run a different type of scan. I want to run a subdomain scan on OWASP.org domain. In order to do that, I need to run OWASP Nettacker with a target of OWASP.org, and the module name is subdomain scan. Okay, let's run this, and as you can see, Nettacker quite quickly discovered all the subdomains of OWASP.org, which is pretty impressive. Okay, you can see it discovered 25 subdomains. So what we want to do now is use another cool feature of Nettacker, and that is called a method chaining. So we can actually run multiple modules on the same target, and in this case I want to run a subdomain scan, and I also want to run a port scan on each subdomain of OWASP.org. But of course that will take quite a long time, so I'm only interested in ports 80 and 443 really. So in order to tell Nettacker to perform a port scan on specific ports only, we can achieve this by defining a command line switch called -g. So I'm going to say -g, and I'm going to list ports 80 and 443. I'm not really interested in anything else. And the last command line switch that I need to define here to make sure that the port scan is run on every single subdomain discovered is -s. Okay, So let's review this command one more time. So this command is going to run a subdomain scan on OWASP.org, which means it's going to find all the subdomains of OWASP.org. Then it's going to run a port scan on each of the discovered subdomain, only scanning ports 80 and 443, and it's going to do it for each subdomain discovered. Let's run this now. Okay, as you can see, Nettacker is already discovering all the subdomains and is now running the port scan. So we can see already that domain names like OCMS and www2 have ports 80 and 443 open. Let's wait and see what else Nettacker can find here. Okay, our scan is complete. We can scroll up to see the results. As you can see, there are quite a lot of them. So now I'm going to show you another cool feature of Nettacker, the reports. So as you can see, after completion of the scan, we got this message that report was saved in this file name and the database. So let's have a look what's inside this file name. I'm going to type Firefox to open my Firefox, and let's open this HTML file. Here we got this awesome penetration testing graph. So if we zoom in, we can see all the subdomains of OWASP.org discovered here. And we can see that in each subdomain, a port scan was performed. And we can see all the subdomains where port 443 and 80 was opened. And if we scroll down, we can see the results visible in the tabular format as well. Okay, now I'm going to show you a different module. So instead of running a port scan, we can use a module which is called server version vuln. Server version vuln will show us the server banner in response of a web server. So if we run it on each subdomain of OWASP.org here, this is going to be quite interesting. So let's run this. As you can see, again, Nettacker is discovering all the subdomains. You can see now, instead of giving us the port numbers, it tells us that a particular target is vulnerable to server version disclosure in headers, and it shows us the contents of that server header in response. Okay, the scan is now complete. As you can see, we got the results in a HTML file again, and we can have a look at it again. Let's run our Firefox, and let's have a look at this file. Okay, let's wait for the graph to load. Looks like this time is going to take some time. Now let's talk about another feature of OWASP Nettacker, which is getting reports in different format. As you have seen, by default, OWASP Nettacker produces results in HTML format. However, it can also produce results in JSON or CSV format. So, for example, if you want to get results in JSON format, you would specify the -o for output, and then the name of the file where you want to store the results, and the JSON. And if you want to get results in CSV format, you just name your file as CSV and rerun the scan. Okay, our scan is finished, and if you have noticed now, report is saved in results.csv and the database. So let's have a look at this CSV file. I have LibreOffice installed in my Kali. So to have a look at CSV files in a spreadsheet, I need to run calc and results.csv. Okay, this is a comma separated file. So let's load it, and lo and behold, we got the results of the scan in a nice spreadsheet format. Not many security tools are actually doing this, so I think this is a pretty cool feature. Okay, and because this is a spreadsheet, we can use data analysis here. So let's switch on the filters. And for example, if we're only interested in the subdomains which return the server banner, so we'll use server version vuln. There you go, the list is now shorter. And if, of course, we only want to, for example, if we want to take a look at all the subdomains which use Atlassian proxy, we can do that as well. And as you can see, it returns us the list of the subdomains. In this case, these are OCMS and contact. Okay, and the next cool feature of OWASP Nettacker I want to demonstrate is API and Web UI. Unfortunately, we don't have time to look at the API itself, but Web UI is based on it. And in order to start the Web UI, we're going to use a command line option that we haven't seen before. That is --start--API. So when we start API, you will see something interesting. We will see an API key. We will need to copy that key. You can see this is running Flask. And we can see that by default, OWASP Nettacker Web UI is running on port 5000. Okay, let's have a look at what is running on this port using a web browser. Let's start our Firefox and connect to HTTPS 127.0.0.1 port 5000. Okay, yeah, well now this is OWASP Nettacker Web UI. We cannot do much in here unless we log in, and the only way for us to log in is to paste this API key that we were given when we started the service. So we need to paste the API key and click on set session. We get a message success, your session updated, which means we are successfully logged in. So what we can do in the web UI is two very important things. So first of all, we can run scans from here, and obviously this is much nicer than command line interface because we get this very nice color coding here as well. The modules which are of type scan are flagged as green. The modules which are of type brute forcing, they are flagged as orange. The modules of type vulnerability are color coded red. So for example, if we want to use some specific vulnerabilities, you can go and tick some of them like this. And this will allow us to run multiple scans. We can also select which graph type we want. We can also select all the scan methods or unselect them. Here you can see also profiles. So profiles are bundles of modules which are predefined. You can easily define your own profile, and essentially that's just a bundle that you want to run a bit more frequently. For example, here you can see that we have a bundle called WordPress. That means that all the scan, vulnerability, and brute forcing modules which relate to WordPress bundled up together in one profile. Okay, so for example, if I want to use a subdomain scan here, along with ICMP scan, I can add a target. Okay, let's type in OWASP.org. And we also have an advanced screen here. And you can see we have several flags here. For example, we want to do the check subdomains. We can also define the thread numbers, threads per host, number of retries, and the timeout for sleep. Okay, now let's submit the scan. And here we got the success. So OWASP Nettacker is now going to run the scan in the background. And in order for us to access the results, we have to get back to the main menu and then click on the results. Let's refresh, and here is the fresh scan results. I can see that the scan was performed through OWASP Nettacker API. And let's have a look at the results. This looks like exactly what we wanted. We run an ICMP scan and subdomain scan on owasp.org. And here we have a familiar graph that we've seen before. You can see the results in a tabular format, just as usual. And here is another feature that I want to show you in OWASP Nettacker Web UI, and that is the crawler. So the crawler allows us to perform filtering in a database. If you remember, every time we run a scan, we get a message that the report is stored not just an HTML file, a CSV file, JSON file, but also in the database. And API Web UI allows us to access that database, and you can do a bit of filtering. So for example, if we are interested in a particular IP address or the host name, we can just filter all the results by it. If you remember, we run a scan on 192.168.132.177 earlier, and that should be, there you go. So here are the results. So let's have a look at this. You can already see that this was a port scan. Looks like the same host was also scanned for ICMP as well. We can also use this filter for a specific module or a specific result. Okay, as you can see, while we were browsing, OWASP Nettacker command line was actually showing us the log of every single URL which was hit by our browser. In order to stop and get out of the API mode, we can just click Control C to return back to our command line. Okay, and the last thing I want to mention is that OWASP Nettacker is, of course, an open source project, so we welcome all contributions. If you would like to contribute to OWASP Nettacker project, please read the developer wiki first and read and follow the contributor guidelines, which are available on the wiki as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.